Welcome! My name is Catherine Barsonistis, and you're watching the Gluttonous Geek presents Munchies Minis, a D&D and tabletop RPG inspired cooking show where I make a recipe that is inspired by all those games I just said. So, I decided that for the first year at least of this show, I would be following the 52-week D&D fan art challenge. Hashtag 52-week D&D challenge. This week's theme is Tavern, so we're going to be making an ale and cheddar soup. Cheers to that. This particular soup is going to be based off kind of a more rustic recipe. I've got beer in my face. Where it's going to be probably what a tavern keeper might happen to make within the D&D universe. Universes. Who can keep count of all of them? So, normally tavern owners, especially in medieval societies, would not really serve up things, say, like beef stew all that much, because for one, cows are expensive, and normally you don't want to be slaughtering your main source of income, which would normally be dairy, like cheese and milk and all that. Also, you're probably not going to be using all that all that expensive of an ale, because this is usually the stuff is probably gone stale after a while, and you don't want to be serving it to your patrons normally. So waste not, want not. Also, taverns usually served up things like bread or cheese or just stuff that you can normally cycle out but wouldn't spoil all that easily. So you would have vegetables such as, well, carrots, or more than likely, onions, because onions last forever. But since the whole waste not, want not, and I did mention bread earlier, bread goes stale. What do you do with stale bread? Well, you either use it for your plates, so hence we are serving our cheese soup in a bread bowl. And also, what else do you do with stale bread? You crumble it into crumbs. And actually, most medieval recipes do use breadcrumbs as a thickener as opposed to just flour. We are going to be using a mixture of both, mostly because whenever you would normally try to make a beer cheese soup or make a cheese sauce, you notice how the cheese tends to get rather oily and stringy as you're trying to melt it into the milk? It just does that. However, if you add some kind of starch, it'll bind with the dairy to make it a smoother finish. But also, we're just going to use this as a thickener into a blonde type of roux. Now, I am going to first start doing our prep work. Now, the first part of doing prep work is preparing your vegetables to make a mirepoix, which is basically the French word for a fancy flavoring base that is usually a trifecta of carrots, onions, and celery. First, we're going to start with our onion. Now, you see it's mostly peeled here, but I'm just going to remove the top layer of peel, where there's still a little bit of good part to it, but it still has all that papery bit. I'm just going to fold it back and hold it down there. Just keep that part on there because it's going to be a way of keeping you from slicing up your fingers when you start getting towards the root end. Now we're just going to dice that onion. So the way you normally want to start, let me start over here. Before you do any knife cuts, it's important to learn how to hold a knife properly, because a lot of times, and I have done this in the past before I learned this, believe me, I've held a knife like this. I'm sure everybody else has, right? However, this is how you possibly chop your fingers off. Don't do that. Now, the way you do want to hold a knife to keep it from slipping out of your hand is first, with your dominant hand, take your index finger, put that on the underside of the blade right here, up next to the handle. Then put your thumb here. And then comfortably wrap your fingers around the handle. And notice how I say comfortably. I mean, you can adjust this pinch as much as you possibly can, but the important thing is that you have a secure but relaxed grip on the knife and blade. And as you see, I am trying with a lot of strength here to bend the knife either way. It's not going anywhere. All right, now we've gone through that, let's go ahead and start dicing up our onion. So to do a standard dice on an onion, to keep things easy, you will want to follow the natural ridges of the onion. And these are about a 1/2 inch segment, so we're just going to cut these into 1/2 inch segments and a radial cut. So what you first want to do is towards the edge here, get that about a 1/2 inch in, but not all the way to the edge of the root end here. And then just kind of diagonally put your knife through to touch the corner to the edge of the board. Now, the safe way, I know I'm very bad at this, the safe way of then making sure that you're holding them properly without possibly hurting yourself is you kind of make a clutch grip here to kind of draw your fingertips in towards your hand. So we're just going to do that. And now I've got a good stable squish on this onion. I'm just going to draw my knife back and towards the center, towards the board. And I'm just going to keep doing that in 1-inch segments. It's okay to go slow on this section, especially if you're not all that confident. Because safety is the biggest key. I think you'll find that with most knife work and knife cuts, the biggest thing is being able to keep things as stable as possible as you're cutting so you don't hurt yourself. And also, as you see, so you can get uniform enough cuts so everything cooks evenly. Now, as you see, I have rotated my onion around to get at these radial edges a little bit better. So I'm just now starting a bit from the corner of the board, but still keeping that knife tip on the board. Just going to draw that back. And close, but not into the root end. Draw back, just kind of let it sink down at an angle. Pierce the onion, get point, and down. Point, and down. All right, now I've got those radial edges. Now create sort of a box to get those 1/2-inch pieces, and hold the knife still. Hold it, like, put your point on the board there. And without removing the point of the blade from the board, you just kind of draw back, push down. Well, no, you don't want to have the knife ever leave the board. The point of the knife is going to rise up. Sorry, I just got something on my eye for some... Is that an eyelash? Oh, okay. So, as you see, in this you want to actually have a little bit more of a fluid motion on. But as you see, I'm drawing my fingers back, and this is where having this little bit of onion peel helps, because I can keep my fingers far away from the blade for that last little bit. Okay, and now we have a diced onion. Now we're just going to move on to our celery. Just going to cut off those ends there. I'm just going to cut this into chunks. Now, if you were using a food processor, you would just throw this all in the food processor. Now, however, I'm trying to get it smaller to about uniform pieces. So it's at these bottom ends, you see I'm split these pieces of celery into about 1/2-inch wide pieces. And then dice that up. Okay. There's one. So now I'm done with my celery. I'm now into my carrots. I'm just going to go ahead and cut the ends off here. And we're just going to normally, well, if I was being lazy and didn't want to use a clean vegetable peeler, I would just, put the ends of the carrot here and just do this with my knife, because I like to live dangerously. But please don't do that if you've never done that before. Instead, we got a vegetable peeler. Now, it's going to make things a lot faster, as you can see, to just put the end of my carrot on the board and just pivot that as I go. And then turn that over and get these last little bits here. And get the other one. If anyone's wondering what I'm drinking tonight, I am drinking Killian's. I chose Killian's for this particular recipe because 1, it's ale, and 2, it's cheap. It's a tavern, and that has ale that costs about a copper. Or wait, what was the price that they normally have for ale again in taverns? My player's handbook's across the room right now, but it's still cheap. And not only is it cheap, it's something that tavern owners wouldn't really mind going stale and going into a soup. So ale is essential, though, because lager is actually cold brewed normally, and that's not really the facility that most monks are going to, like most tavern owners are going to have. Ale is cheap and easy to make, so there you go. Right, I'm on my carrots. So if you're using a food processor, I would just have you cut this once again into chunks. Throw that in there. Let the machine do the work. But if you want to, learn how to do some nice slicing of your own, just got my chunks here. So I have a stable surface. Just gonna slice that in half. Then slice it into planks. They're about a half an inch. You actually want it a little bit thinner for what you want to do because it's going to need to be smaller, and carrots do tend to be harder than celery or onion. So I'm just going to go ahead and slice that up after getting my planks. There you go. So, as you see, I'm just kind of placing the knife when I'm going on certain sides. Just point the blade down, get a little bit in the carrot there, and just push it down. So like I said, the biggest key is to have a stable surface as you're cutting. There is no reason to try to make things more difficult on yourself than need be. All right. Here we go. Okay. Got that. Okay, now I've got all my carrots sliced up. And now we're going to get to the last bit of veggie prepping. We got our garlic cloves here. We're going to use about 6 cloves of garlic in this recipe. So we've got half an onion, either yellow or sweet. I just happen to have a sweet onion here because it was less expensive, and I kind of like them a little better. They're also known as Vidalia onions, for those who haven't seen them before. We got 2 stalks celery, 2 carrots, and like I said, 6 cloves of garlic. So, easy way of peeling garlic without having to get any particular fancy thing. Get those top layers off, then just slice off the root end. Slice it in half. Oh, look. You can just pull that right off of there. No problem. There it is. Oh, there's a little bit left there. It's being a son of a biscuit. I'm trying to see how long it'll take me to start cursing on this stream. And I'm trying to keep it kind of PG-13. But yeah, garlic clove half. Also, notice how I didn't have to pull out any fancy particular gadgets to get that off? You're welcome. So, garlic. Now, to get the garlic so you can chop it up nicely, if you're going to do a brunoise, whatever, or just mince it. So, first, I'm going to get my kosher salt, which I do highly recommend using kosher salt because it dissolves quickly. You get to taste your food rather quickly. And also it's not nearly as salty as table salt. So, okay, got my salt on my board. Gonna put that garlic clove cut side down. Settle my knife over the clove. And smash it. Now, if you're a bit nervous about smashing, that's okay. You can also just put it on there and push down, just press down, and have the edge of your blade out from your hand. So, pressed. Okay. Pressed and pressed. Okay, so we have our giant pile of vegetables here. Just ready to be made into a mirepoix. And now I've got my veggies. Let's go ahead and move stuff over to my stove. All right, here we are. Just getting the vent on. Turn the heat on your skillet to a medium-high heat. I'm just going to wait for that to get hot. In the meantime, I am going to get my other ingredients together. So for this recipe, you're also going to need 2 cups of beer. In this case, Killian's. I'm just going to start measuring things out into a separate bowl so I know what I'm doing. Got on that prep station there. All right, bowls, bowls, bowls. Here we are. Here's a bowl. So, first in this bowl, I'm going to get 2 cups of beer, which there's 1. Well, technically 1.5. It's 12-ounce beer. So let's do about a half cup on here. Well, see, 12 ounces plus 4 ounces, and that is the wrong measuring cup to be using for this. Pour that in. 2 cups beer. Give myself a little bit more beer. Top myself off there. I've already lost track. More beer. Yay. Right. Then I'm going to put in 2 cups of chicken stock. This is my homemade chicken stock. Just you can put it into freezer bags and then freeze it for however long you will please. I will say my favorite stock I ever made was rotisserie chicken and lobster. And I'm going to need 2 cups of milk. So I'm just going to wash that out a little bit. We're adding 2 cups of milk to this measuring cup right here. Actually, it's just better if I do it this way because I can see what I'm doing. That's the trouble I have with a lot of plastic measuring cups where they have sort of laser-etched measurements on the side. You can never see what you're doing, and you have to hold it up to light, and even then, it's not stable. So I've got my milk measured out. Now I just need to get my butter measured out here. So we got unsalted butter. So I'm gonna need 4 tablespoons of that total. Just gonna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just gonna cut that up. Ready. And easiest way to tell if a pan is hot enough, just kind of take some water, cold water in your hands, pan you're heating up, Oh yeah, that's nice and hot. So, first I'm just going to put my whole veggie mix in there to cook off some moisture. Because one, it's frozen, but two, just to kind of let it cook off some excess moisture, especially from the celery and onion. So, got that nice layer of chopped up veggies, well, smashed up veggies. Just gonna let that soften up a bit for, say, let's go for about 4 to 6 minutes. So we're just gonna put a timer on for now, 4 minutes. Like I said, I leave it up to you whether you want to do your mirepoix frozen or not. You know, as you see, it's cooking down and it's gonna tenderize a bit as we go. Actually, I think I'm probably going to let that go a little bit longer, another 2 minutes, just to get up some of that excess moisture from it being frozen. And start putting my stuff away. Now, part of the biggest thing with the recipes I'm wanting to do with this with this show is to kind of give you something to eat along with as you're playing a session, something that you can share with your friends, or if you just happen to need a snack and just kind of want to get in the fantasy mood, or I know, giggity. You just want to have that sort of ambiance while you're working on anything game related. Food is a good way of bridging that particular gap, especially, you know, with the whole reason why we role play to begin with is to connect with a different world from our own, to kind of live in that world. And what better way to do that than eating? I mean, everyone eats. You can taste exactly what your characters are tasting. So that's what I'm doing with this. Now, with the 52 weeks challenge, I'm hoping to kind of take that whole fan art challenge and do it with food. So like I said, this week is themed for Tavern. Next week, the theme is map. So I am doing what I'm calling Breakfast for Dungeon. You'll have to come back and see what that means. Please come back. I promise you it'll be a fun time, and it'll take a lot less time than this, trust me. The biggest thing about soup is it does take some time. Having that timer go off at me, so I'm going to just go back to my stove cam, see how we're doing on that moisture. Okay, it's doing it. It's doing its thing. It is softening some. Well, it's kind of softening, but that's fine because it's going to be simmering anyway. Okay, we're probably good here to now add two tablespoons of butter. Kind of let that melt. I'm going to set a timer for about 4 minutes here. Kind of let that melt down and cook a bit more. Now, just because this is what I do, I'm going to add some kosher salt to this. Just kind of keep it going, facilitate some. Now, the standard way to salt a dish as you're cooking it, or just seasoning it in general, you have a kosher salt here. See that? Okay. So you do a pinch of kosher salt. Now, I know you're thinking, oh, just a pinch, like that much? No. No, the standard pinch in culinary terms, and it's okay that I'm doing this to kosher salt because salt is antibacterial, is that you take about 3 fingers here, kind of dig that in there, and grab it with your thumb like that. It's a lot more, right? And you're going, oh, well, that's a lot of salt. Well, that's fine because kosher salt has larger flakes, it dissolves quickly, and it's not nearly as not nearly as salty as table salt. So the result you're going to get from this is that when you taste your food, you're going to taste the salt immediately and have better control over how much you should salt it for taste. I wish you could smell my kitchen right now. It smells amazing. Just something about the scent of melting butter is just... Now I've got about 2 tablespoons of Italian-style breadcrumbs here. Now, like I said, back in the medieval times, they would use breadcrumbs more often to thicken recipes than flour. I mean, flour, you need that to cook. Breadcrumbs, you're not really going to do much with it except thicken things, because it's usually stale bread. So first I'm just going to add that to that, kind of stir it in, get it all moistened and such. And as you see, as this is cooking down, the vegetables are kind of mashing up for me too, getting all nice and tender. Get that in there. It's all thickened up nicely. And now I am going to add my beer and stock mix. Trust me, that ice will melt down. I'm going to try to bring it up to a boil. First I'm going to put the heat up a bit higher to get that going. Scraping the bottom of the pan, making sure that all of the bits are lifted off the bottom. Just gonna get that to a boil. I'm going to start in then on my cheese sauce roux to make the cheese portion of this particular dish. First, I'm just going to get my stovetop on, about medium heat. And then I am going to add another 2 tablespoons of butter to that mix, to that saucepan. This is goodness, like what, a 2-quart saucepan, I think. Okay, let's go ahead and put the butter in. Wow, that made quite a noise. Okay, just gonna let that do its thing, get all nice and melty. And while I'm waiting for that to melt on me, first I'm going to, no, I can wait. Let's see what we're doing here. Butter. Oh yeah, that's still taking time. It's gonna be some time. So now we're just gonna switch back to our prep can and make our bread bowl for our soup. So, first, what you want to do, this is a 8-ounce sourdough round from Publix. Now, what first you want to do to make this bread bowl is that you use this serrated knife here, and once again, you hold it properly, finger here, thumb here, curled around, and kind of hold it parallel to the board. And we want to go about, I want to say that's about 3/4 of an inch down off the top. So we're just going to kind of saw into that to cut a flat lid, so to speak. Oh, it looks like my butter is melted. Okay, just going to finish up cutting that lid real quick to go back to my butter. Now I'm going to take 2 tablespoons now of flour. Yeah, that's getting all nice and foamy. And then start whisking that in to make a blonde roux. And you see it's already kind of bubbling a bit. And the biggest thing is that you do not want to have any lumps in this roux. So you just kind of get that going nicely. Make sure it's all nice and smooth and not scorching at all. Okay, yeah, that is foaming and turning a nice light brown. So now I am going to add my milk. Pour that sucker in there. And just whisk that up. Oh. Did this start boiling without me? I guess it's boiling. Nope, just foaming. Okay, so I'm gonna whisk that roux into the milk. Make sure it's free of lumps and well incorporated. I'm just going to let that cook for a little bit. Well, I'm going to check on my soup. Now that's Trouble with beer and trying to simmer something is that it gets more foamy than simmery. So it certainly smells like beer, I can tell you that. I'm just going to add another pinch of salt to that. And to my cheese sauce. And where I put my own instructions that I made up. Okay, let's see. Right, now I'm going to turn... Oh, yep, we got some boiling here. Excellent. So now that I've got some boiling on my soup, I'm going to turn that low to low. So then just start simmering. And we're just going to have that going for about 10 minutes. So we got about 3 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. And I'm just going to, well, for one, move this out of the way. So I'm not doing this with my right hand. And so I can actually stir at the same time. And I'm just going to add my cheese. A small handful at a time. Probably add a little bit more to that to melt. But first I'm just going to... Oh good, I already have my stovetop down to low. You want it at low temperatures so it doesn't get a film of skin on it. And it's actually got a good time to do all this. See, it's starting to change color some. Now, as this gradually cooks, it's also going to thicken the sauce while melting the cheese. The flour does add as a thickener, but it coats the dairy in this so it distributes evenly throughout the sauce. It looks like my cheese is melted, so I'm just going to let that cook and thicken up a little bit more for now. Oh, doing good right now. I think I might turn the heat up a little bit on that cheese sauce, a little bit more. Okay, while that cheese sauce is waiting, I'm going to switch us back to our prep cam to pick up where we left off on this bread bowl. Now, as you see, I went ahead and sliced off the top there. That can be used as a lid. Now, I'm going to take a tablespoon and find my instructions that I had written this morning. Okay, to pull the inner bread from this round and get it about 3/4 of an inch to an inch away from the edge there. Just kind of carve with your spoon around that circle. Just hollow it out. I'll say the scent of sourdough is glorious. Okay. Cutting under with my spoon a little bit. And then just kind of remove that. Oh look, you have yourself a bread bowl. Just going to scoop out a little bit more. There. Okay, a bread bowl. Now, you could just keep this excess bread here to dip into your soup while you're eating it, but I think I'm going to make some croutons, actually. Some garlic bread croutons to go along with this. So, easiest way of doing this, we're just gonna take that, make some cubes, and if you have an oven, you can throw it under your broiler for a few minutes, but I'm actually going to use my toaster oven and toast it. So, I'm just going to put this in this bowl that I had earlier. Trust me, you're definitely going to have more in there if you're making enough for a group of people. It's just, I only had enough to make for one person. Well, I only had enough bread to make a bowl for one person. So as you see here, I just went ahead and put some cooking spray on there. And I've got some garlic powder. Just gonna sprinkle that on there. Get that going. And I'm just gonna stick it on this little plate here and throw it in the toaster. Well, toaster oven. Have that going. Okay, so yeah, that's simmered down some, and looks like our veggies have gotten a bit more tender. Let's just check that with it's tender-ish. Okay, and our cheese sauce. Nice and thick. So now I'm just going to take advantage of the heat I've already got going in my soup. Turn off the burner on the cheese sauce. And I'm just going to gently whisk that cheese in there. There we go. Yeah. Oh, that smells amazing. Okay. The whisk is to make sure that it all incorporates nicely without getting all stringy. You can see it's doing that. And that there should be enough soup for about, I want to say 4 to 6 people. Really just depends on how large a bowl you use. And of course, what is the purpose of presenting a meal to your friends without having any kind of presentation? I'm going to put this bread bowl here onto a plate. Then I'm going to take this soup here. Oh, it's so pretty. Turn the heat off, of course. Put some soup into the bowl I just made. Look at that. I mean, look at that. That's just gorgeous, right? Okay. So, some garnishes here. Got some old style mustard, which is really nice. I also have some fresh dill because the dill plant we have going in our little herb garden is going absolutely crazy. Got some fresh dill here. Take the soup over to my croutons. Some croutons there. Got some of that old style seeded mustard. I'm just gonna add a little bit right at the center there. As well as some fresh dill sprigs. That's gorgeous. Okay, and try to top that off a bit with this bread lid. Hope for the best. That is not the best. Let's just put it there. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Yeah. Cool. Okay. There you go. We have a bowl, a bread bowl, of ale and cheddar soup made like you would find in a tavern in Dungeons & Dragons.